So I'm Erin Bakken. I am the creative director at Collierville United Methodist Church out in Collierville. I've been there for about a year. The church has been there since 1865, so it's a little older than me. And we got about 2,700 members, and yeah, just been kind of rolling with the punches.
Hi, I'm Joe Urkovich. I am at High Point Church in Memphis, Tennessee. I am on the creative team, which consists of the production team and the worship team, and I oversee video and media.
All right. Hi, I'm David Brown. I am from Brown Baptist Church in South Haven, Mississippi. We have a membership of about 12,000, and we're Baptist, as you can see. I serve as the creative director. Been in this position, started this year, actually, in this position. So it basically oversees the audio, video production, and then the marketing and communications and digital side.
So my name is John Simpson. I work at Grace Evangelical Church of Germantown, Grace Van. When we started this thing, I was considered a media coordinator, but since COVID's happened, I'm now director of media production. We've had to hire a few more people and do a few extra things, and that's my story.
I'm Ken Dean from First Baptist Church in Millington, Tennessee. I'm the minister of media production, I guess they call me now. Church is about 132 years old, so we've been around a little while. I've been there 7 years, and oddly enough, was able to bring on a full-time employee in my department through all this situation we're in now. So.
I am Toby Denman. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications at Hope Church. We have been around we're going into our 32nd year, and our membership is about 8,000, give or take, and my department is responsible for everything from the website to all of our social media to anything printed and external advertising.
All right, good deal. Ken, I want to jump to you because specifically you are a minister and in media. And so talk about some of those, I guess, dual roles, what you have to consider, which may be difficult for someone who's just a director of media or communications or marketing director.
Well, the minister of media position was created when they brought me on. Before they just had kind of a technical director, I guess, and then they decided to change roles and wanted to grow the media or the ministry staff. So, I'm able to do hospital visitations and counsel with folks. And what you find, and I know you guys even do, ladies, people on your team will see you as the leader. Sometimes they'll go to you before they go to the pastor for many of their spiritual needs or personal needs, whatever. But it's just more of an official capacity. But again, I see this in churches all over the place, not just the minister parts. Everyone's a minister when you think about it. So, but at the same time, I'm also controlling, overseeing the lights and the sound and the video and the online and our graphics and communications in a slightly different department where we work closely together. It's been a good fit.
All right. Anybody else who has either a heart or a fit? Do they think that their position is a ministry type position besides just a technical or a marketing?
Well, we've been reaching out to get a lot more volunteers lately. I'll say that much. We have someone, Jim Umloff, who's the worship director. He's over the media and over all the print, all this stuff. But he's also the worship leader, so he's so busy, writing music, and he also teaches a class in between all this, and he's running back and forth, that a lot of that falls on us. And so one of the things that we've been starting to do, because we have not had this many volunteers before. I mean, we literally had 3 people. Now we got just 25 to 30. We're just trying to grow it so that we have some redundancies and to try to figure out the processes to actually implement more ministry. Not just, hey, we need someone to come do the lights, but what does that mean long term? How do you keep a volunteer? When I worked at New Direction, I dealt with a lot more than I have at Grace, but it's a different church, which means different nuances and different things. So, I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about how y'all have been successful in maintaining that ministry and growing that volunteers and not just running them in the ground and having them walk away saying, I don't ever want to do this again.
Yeah.
We, we went from doing these live events every week, weekly in all different ministries to more of what we initially jumped into, kind of producing a TV show for Sundays, essentially. We've started to incorporate volunteers again, and we actually have an open date that we're coming up on here shortly. But I think one of the things that really challenged, especially our creative team, people who are kind of tech specialists, is our pastors basically told the staff, "Hey, we're gonna have these call lists that we need. You're not only going to be talking and having conversations with your volunteers, but we really want you to reach out to our people." And so that's been kind of a challenging thing, especially for people who are just used to, heading into the office and editing all day. And now I've actually seen how productive it is and how much people just appreciate a phone call and that encouragement, because a lot of people feel isolated right now. So it's been really, we've all had to be pretty pastoral in our positions.
When was the moment that you realized that COVID was consistent and it was not going to change and you needed to change your workflow?
I'd say the Saturday after everything shut down. It was interesting how quickly it happened for us. We were all pulled into an emergency meeting, all of us on the executive board, and I can't remember the actual name of it because, been there a year. But we all sat around the room and we kind of started discussing, well, what does this look like if we shut down? Because at that point, nobody had really shut down. And it was this call that we kind of had to make right away. We're sitting in this meeting and I'm looking up on my laptop quotes, talking to my lady who prints our external signage and things for us. And just remember thinking through this whole, ticking through this entire list in my head of, oh my gosh, this is all of the things that I have to change. We have a smaller creative team. We have a video director, director of video ministry now, and myself, and then we have audio visual, and then worship directors. We're all kind of on our creative team together. But I'm the one who handles the website, the social media, the graphic design, the marketing, the contacts with the media. And it was all this kind of, I thought I was going to have kind of an easy weekend, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, so I'm up until 4 working on this. Kids woke up at 6, and then it was just this constant barrage from there on out. I mean, it just seemed like it was overwhelming.
Welcome to media, right?
Yeah.
Well, for us, we found out, I guess it was March 16th or something. It was like they shut everybody down. So, we immediately went, okay, to your point, where do we go from here? We've got to do something out of the box, and church isn't going to be what it has been. This is where obviously streaming comes in. We went to pre-producing services because I didn't see any point for it to. Some people chose to do live. You can, but at the end of the day, people are going to watch your service later most of the time. We found that a lot of people tuned in live. A lot of people would watch it after the fact, especially when they realized that they didn't have to get up early on Sunday mornings. So, but our team, we actually would spend Sunday afternoon, record our worship sets, and then mix them down, audio post them on Monday, record the pastor and his message on Tuesday, and then put it all together and have it ready to upload it to 3 platforms by Sunday. So but it created a lot more work in a sense, but it was me and my assistant were really excited. It's like we finally get to really do what we love to do, and that's all we have to do. We don't have to go do this or do that, because our focus was completely on getting the service on the internet for our members and those kind of things. So.
I'm curious, how that worked for everybody else. I know when we watched the numbers, that first Sunday, I think it shut down. We had so many people trying to live stream, but literally it trended over time. And I don't know if y'all seen the same thing where you get that little hit, I guess, on Sunday from the people who still actually get up. But man, if you watch those numbers by Tuesday morning, it's tripled, quadrupled, and all that. Is that how y'all experienced it too, or?
Yeah, for us, we see that we have a lot of folks that like their service.
Yep.
And so we were early on doing the live service for all of the services, which made it difficult. And we transitioned into partial pre-record and then partial live. And then we finally made our way all the way to the fact that we really need to pre-record. And only until a couple of weeks ago did we start, recording live again for a 5:30 service, and then, then broadcasting that on Sunday. But to go back to Chris's question about when we thought that this was going to be longer, we had our senior associate pastor test positive, and it hit the media within a week. And our social media feeds blew up. I mean, not only were we trying to take care of our flock and provide them all of the things that they're needing, luckily we had already, though we didn't really broadcast it, we had been, on Facebook Live and actually live on our website, but we did not necessarily advertise that. If you found it, great, and if you didn't, great. So that was such a blessing, given the fact that we were already on our way, but now we have over 20 ministries that are now looking at my department and our video department to say, okay, how can you help? And then in the midst of that, I've got all the media outlets knocking on our doors and ringing our phones because we're all working from home, saying, did you have church while you had, a pastor on staff that tested, positive for coronavirus? So from that point, then we led right into Easter. And not having Easter at Hope, that was the seal of the deal for me in regards to knowing that we were in this for the long haul.
Yeah, David, when did you know? When did it hit you?
Yeah, I think kind of the same thing. It kind of revolved around in the Easter, I guess, planning stuff. When I started, vendors started calling me saying, are you still going to do Easter? Are you still going to do Easter? And finally, I wouldn't answer the phone. I would just leave a go to voicemail or not respond to emails. But finally, it just hit. We're not going to have Easter services. We're not going to have the egg hunt and all the different activities and things like that. So I think it hit for me about maybe 3 weeks before Easter. We're not sending out these mailers and things, everything that go on with that. And we really have to plan for something, an experience online that kind of is some sort of resemblance of Easter. We've actually been live since we've started the pandemic, since the church is shut down. So we chose to go live for all 3 services. So we've been doing that for about, 5 or 6 months now. And I guess the reasoning behind it is, for our church and our congregation, especially the older congregation, they were just so used to service being a part of Sunday or Saturday that we thought that it would keep some sense of normalcy for them to have it live. And our pastor's really good about doing live interaction. So we had to figure out a way where people could interact with him. And so we created like a text number and things like that. And he's real good about, somebody will send in, it's their 30th anniversary or they're celebrating this or it's their birthday, so that allows people to really engage, I think, on the live. We haven't seen such a big uptick in watching on demand. People watch the sermons on demand, but not really the services. And so we've actually went to putting our sermons and sermon clips out more than actually relying on the on-demand aspect of the whole service.
What did you learn about your media ministry or your church after having to change your media production or your communication? What did you learn about something that you didn't realize, whether it was you've got an older congregation that really was engaged, or you had young people who used the platform that you never had to consider before? Like, what was something that you learned during this transition?
Well, Collierville Methodist is, Collierville United Methodist, I have to say that, can't just say the shortened, is mostly an older generation church. And we had this big fear during that Saturday meeting that I was talking about. We were afraid that shutting down the church would alienate the older generation that was going to the sanctuary on the square, which is our super traditional, smaller church service on the Collierville Town Square. And we kind of voiced our opinions on that, and we tried to kind of pinpoint, well, what can we do if these people are upset, which really you can't do a whole lot at that point. But we kind of prepared for the worst, and we were actually pleasantly surprised. Like, everybody seemed to be very understanding and very malleable in trying to figure out the new platforms. We did get a lot more phone calls and some kind of emails and things about trying to interact. But we were pretty happy. We're pretty excited that everyone adapted well to moving to online church. But yeah, we kind of started with live and then moved to pre-recorded, and then our church congregation was a little more anticipatory of going back to live, and so now we kind of have a hybrid. We have one service that's pre-recorded and one that's live, and we just started that this last weekend, and so it was interesting to see how many people were, they felt comfortable enough to express their opinions and their desires about things and how important these services were to them. But the flexibility, I think, was probably what we were most impressed with.
I would say, I guess another thing to learn is our congregation is, it tends older, but we have a cross span of good generation, every generation. But what I realized about our ministry was the ministry doesn't look like the church. So a lot of my volunteers were the older generation. And of course, those were the people that were impacted most by COVID and weren't willing to volunteer at the church. The most committed people were now, I can't come out. I have pre-existing conditions, or I'm taking care of somebody, or, it's just, I don't want to be in that environment. And so realizing for me that we need to make some changes, I guess, in recruiting and things like that to make sure that our ministry kind of reflect the population of the church and the demographics of the church. And I guess another thing is just realizing that, I guess our pastor talked about faithfulness and how God's faithfulness will get us through. That was the last sermon before we were in church was about the faithfulness of God, and we have to remain faithful through the night. And just seeing over the 5 months, just the resolve of the different ministries. I know it's been challenging because it's hard to get in contact with us. It's hard to, we have so many meetings, but their resilience to still do marriage counseling, do baptisms, do all these things online. It's just really been something to see the resilience of the people, of the other ministries of the church really coming forward and really being able to do ministry online during this time.
I think I've even seen y'all have like a Zoom or a fitness class live online.
Yeah, we even did fitness classes online, yes. Our pastor wanted everything that was everything that was physical online. So we started out doing live fitness workouts, and we did go to that pre-recorded. So we pre-recorded them all on a Saturday, but and sent them out on demand. But even stuff like that, people were really appreciative of. They were able to do in their house, and then it's allowed other people who never knew we had fitness ministries or offered these things to really see, what we do.
Good deal. You said John, you said your ministry or department grew?
Yeah. So one of the things that happened was the college universities kind of shut down. So all of a sudden, interns that we've had in the past just showed up out of the blue in February, hey, y'all need some help? I don't have anything else to do. And one of these guys, his name's Reagan. He's been a rock star, so he just kind of just rolled him in. I think he's like a 40-hour-a-week part-time, typical, college intern, whatever you want to call him. But he is getting paid, and he's killing it. Going to what you said about the change, in my head, I can remember there was this immediate trend to people actually tuning in on the times. Like, we actually changed 9:25, then we had 11 o'clock, and we stuck to those. And man, you would see it just rock steady. But as time went by, we literally watched that fall down, like I was talking about the on-demand stuff. But what I really have started to see in the trending now is it's almost like it verbatim what people do with Netflix and YouTube. You have this younger generation that's hitting different, and they're cutting off. You see it spike, and it goes down, spiking. And we think that's like the younger people hitting it at certain times. Whereas you got the older generation that are still watching it at the normal time. And then you have like my generation that's like after they mow the grass and the kids are asleep and they can actually focus at like 9:30 at night actually watching these things. We did a thing called We the Church where we recorded, it was like 3 weeks, 16 episodes leading up to when we opened the church. And man, that thing was just watching it up and down, and then people would actually just binge it. Like it was, like we'd say, hey, tonight at 5 o'clock, Dr. Young talks about whatever, this and that, and then we wouldn't get any hits. But then like 2 days later, man, you'd see like all of a sudden all 3 of these are getting hits. And like, it's like they were waiting to a certain time. I think what's been weird for us is the whole thing of church as we knew it just kind of changed. And it became like this on-demand kind of platform like anything else. And what's interesting is to see how this thing trends as we open up as churches, dealing with disruption. Like there's gonna be times when like, I guess online viewing for us is gonna be down because we're not typically that type of church, but like we're there now because who knows? I mean, University of Alabama just had the highest COVID cases. People are gonna shut down again, and then we as church, we might shut down. We need to be there. I don't know, I'm just anxious to see how that turns out over time.
All right, Ken and Joe, a question about platforms. You mentioned going to 3 platforms. I want you to tell me why, not without telling too much of your secret sauce. Tell me why you chose those platforms. If you've
Which platform?
Well, you said when you stream, you said you use 3 platforms.
Yeah.
And
always,
explain those platforms, and then the same thing, Joe, with your with your platforms. Why you chose the platforms? Whether you've done the research or you were already there.
So we were already, we started streaming in 2015. We started out with live stream, had an encoder already, a TriCaster, which had an encoder built in it, just for streaming. I didn't use it for anything else. But and then as the years passed, that encoder was starting to get a little long in the tooth. So I had a relationship with Pixel Faith out of Atlanta, and through Lifeway, I think it's one source or something. They have you go through that module, and you can get church can get a discount, big discount on Pixel Faith's platform. And then when COVID hit and we had to do online only, we were just doing Facebook and the website. YouTube we were doing later. We would upload it later. But we found that people have smart TVs and they wanted to be able to watch YouTube directly on their TV without having to look up a computer or look at a computer screen. So, okay, well, let's go to YouTube too. So now we stream to all 3 platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and through our website using Pixel Faith. Yeah, it's worked out real well. It's about, each platform seems to have about even numbers as far as who watches what, although I am starting to see a little uptick in the website, just through Pixel Faith. The Facebook and YouTube numbers haven't really grown as much as I thought they would, and you're seeing more people, and I don't know if it's because it's more stable. Sometimes there's hiccups with Facebook and YouTube being free platforms.
What analytics are you looking at?
Pixel has its own analytics built in it because I'm using their encoder and their platform. It gives me analytics for
like how long watch time?
Yeah.
As opposed to
We've been streaming for a number of years now, and when COVID hit, man, we just looked at each other like, thank God we've been doing this a while, because we were already behind the 8 ball, and it just felt like, man, okay, there are some things where we're further ahead than a lot of people. I know my uncle's church literally had an iPad, just like FaceTime or streaming, and the shot never changed. But now we use Living as One, which connects to Church Online platform, Facebook, and YouTube. And for a while, for a good few months, we had people on our staff who are actually like facilitators on those platforms. We found that the interaction is starting to diminish now. And I don't know, I think we've been having conversations about why are people less engaged right now? And we really think stream fatigue is a real thing. It's got to go beyond the content that you're watching. And our lead pastor, Will Franco, has even challenged us, hey guys, we have to think beyond just the show or just the content we're putting out there, beyond the way we're packaging it. People are really hungry for relationships. So how is our ministry going to move forward being pandemic proof and persecution proof? Because we believe these things, we've seen one, we're going to see the next one, and we just want to be prepared. How are we going to do ministry moving forward? That goes beyond the technical aspects of how we stream, but it's really making us ask a lot of good questions about what does ministry look like in the future.
Well, we really realize that the building doesn't matter anymore. That's really, I mean, it's important, but it's really insignificant to, we learned that's not necessary right now, as much as we love it. And it's, a lot of us have really nice buildings, but, like you said, we've got to figure out the church is out there. The church is the people, so.
This may or may not be diving too far in deep into your world, but business, the budgets of it, like how do you, I guess the question I get asked a lot is how can you justify either a Facebook ad purchase or the purchase of new equipment or maintenance, over annual maintenance of gear that is more higher end, not prosumer, novice type stuff. So how can you say that, I don't know, let's just say an $11,000 lens is worth it? How can you justify that in media ministry?
When is this coming out?
What's that?
Our budget's in 2 weeks. I just want to make sure.
We've already spent ours.
We just got to our new budget year, so we're like,
But yeah,
I got to sell this
baby.
next week.
but really, how do you justify it? Because obviously most churches run on tithes, and so you're asking the church to trust you with your investments. So the business part of it, I mean, there is a business mind to making sure ministry works effectively. How do you make those calls? How do you justify those expenses?
Well, we unfortunately were not as ahead of the game when it came to streaming, and we were kind of more along the lines like Toby said about if you find the stream, that's great, and it was kind of stationary shots, which wasn't bad. I mean, our church, like I'd said, is it's a little more older generation, but we do have a good mix of younger too. But we discovered that having to move everything online, we weren't satisfied with how it looked. We weren't satisfied with not the product, I hate to say that, but like the end result of what we were putting forward. We wanted it to be the best representation of the gifts that God had given us. So it kind of spurred us to really evaluate what we wanted the service to look like, which made us initially, that was one of the reasons we decided to start doing pre-recorded, because it gave us a little more flexibility with the equipment that we already had. But when we started wanting to do more streaming and doing a little more upgrading, and we saw, churches that were doing it well, like Hope and High Point and others, and it was just this kind of, oh, well, this is so important, and this is the way that our church family is going to feel connected. And so it was a little easier in the sense of, okay, so we had this money budgeted for print design that we don't need right now. We had just started doing a web overhaul, and we kind of had already gotten that mostly rolling to an extent, but it became this whole, well, what money can we pull that we don't currently need to be able to fund presenting something that our church will feel is kind of like their home. So it became very important to us to put our best foot forward and make sure that we were representing what you would see if you were to enter the building and be there in service. Because like you said, people were craving relationship, and you're not able to get a lot of that. So it was kind of it was almost like a stopgap to do the quick online streaming. But then when we kind of decided, okay, well, this is something that we really need to delve into our budget. We really need to kind of come up with a way to make something that they would be proud to be a part of. And it just kind of, it was a little difficult to, to write the checks or to charge the card and, those kinds of things, to make those calls. But I mean, in the end of it, it was just what we could do to make people feel more connected to God and more connected to others. So it made sense. It was tough, but sometimes you kind of had to bite it, bite the bullet and go for it. So
Just go straight down.
Yeah, man, so much as you're talking. I was thinking, it's funny because we were all Panasonic shop, and we decided to switch over to Black Magic right when the pandemic hit, and it was like, oh my goodness, how do we figure this out? We've always been a church that has tried to do as much as we can with very little budget. We're very budget minded. We just have always said, how can we get creative and try to do things that high dollar churches do, but like on a budget. So I think we kind of had this COVID budget, basically, where all these other little budgets that we had, we put it into the pot, and we just said, we're going to have to make this stuff work. And it was really great that we actually switched over to Black Magic, because all this stuff is cheaper, and it's worked out really well for us. There's been challenges, obviously, with using different gear, but man, I think I'm really grateful for the effort that everyone put in over these last 6-7 months, and I just think the gear really is there to, once again, people crave that connection, and it's really changed. It hasn't changed the way we've spent money as much as it's changed the way we've thought about how do we program, what kind of content do we put out there. And as you said, people are craving relationship. That informed what we put out there. We have a hosting section now on our services where we just said, hey, people really like it when you just talk about whatever you did that week, goof around, like, be lighthearted. Not everything has to be this direct communication, spirit-filled communication. We can just be ourselves and relax a little bit. And we found that people have really leaned into that. So,
Budget, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I was in the midst of my sole capital improvement for this year was upgrading the camera system. We were going from SD to HD at one of our campuses, and the installation date was, I think, March 1. So obviously it was, perfect timing. But I just think, like I talked about earlier, just that mandate to do things that we were doing physically to now move it to virtual. So that has really been helpful. Those budgets that were, spent for, these physical outings are now being spent for digital. I think for me, it's just trying to be good stewards of that and trying to figure out what we can get for, not just for that event, but to help that ministry and the church as a whole long term. So trying to make informed, purchasing decisions and trying to get equipment that can be used, for the long term. And so just trying to do that, I think, is how. And it's funny you asked this question because I got a call from my pastor yesterday about he wants to do a giving campaign just to show all the things that we've done so that people will know what we've invested in. And I think that's a good thing, and we're putting together the list. But I think just showing the things, what we invested in, and then what were the outcomes, I think will help the congregation understand. And then I've just tried to make sure that everybody on my team is member-centric. So even if I've taken calls where people can't find their TV, can't find the YouTube channel, but just trying to make sure that everybody feels like they can get the stuff online. So I think that's been helpful too.
For us, for the 3 years that I've been at Grace, everything has been moving towards like marketing. Like they had a C100, that was it, maybe one lens. Since then, we've grown all this way towards something that when COVID hit, we just dropped and went to this live thing that had never happened. There wasn't even a camera in the sanctuary. So, luckily we have a great worship zone. It's not set up so that John can go to B&H and say, ooh, Black Magic's got a 12K camera, add to cart. There's no way that can happen. There's processes set up. So I was on the phone with the elder like daily or nightly, just for a couple hours every night, talking about what we need to do. Chris Parks, former employee here, was right there neck and neck with me every 7 days a week. We had just to continuously buy things during COVID that we never thought we'd need. And we start with this budget, but then you find out you need 2 switchers because now you got to do this, but now you really need this many things. And we bought a PTZ. We got the controller with it. And at first everybody said, well, we want to go all PTZ. So that just sounds nice. But then you realize there's no substitution, you said yourself, for the actual person who can pan and zoom out, change the focus pull from the drummer to the singer. And PTZs cannot do that. And so your show is completely different without that. We have been very blessed to have the budget and people behind us to get us where we are now, which is we've got a Panasonic camera that was made in 2009. It's camera 2. PTZ's camera 1. We've got a C200 that we bought a couple years ago. That's camera 3. It's just every generation of HD since it's been available. And now going forth, we have a budget meeting in 2 weeks. And me and this guy, Chris Parks, sat down yesterday and just mulled over everything. And it's little things in the budget, like where are your conduits? When our sanctuary was built, we don't have matching conduits for some reason. I don't know why, but you have one here. So now if you want to put in E&G cameras, you're digging concrete. Well, how much does that cost? And then are we even still doing this? And what do we do? And it just breaks my heart as a creative director guy going, we're going to go all PTZ. But at the end of the day, are we really going to bust out the fountain? We just put new carpet in, guys, last year. We're going to bust out the carpet? So that's where my mind was for 4 hours yesterday. And we're trying to figure out where we're going to go because in 2 weeks I got to go to them and talk to them about how we're going to approach this thing. But there's 2 factors. You got you want to do it right. You don't want to go over budget and just be frivolous with the money with tithing. But 2, we're going to have disruptions, so we have to exist. And then 3, how can we maintain that in this new world that we've never been in before? So that's my budget situation.
So I was able to convince the finance committee to buy a $12,000 broadcast audio console through COVID, which I had intended to do like maybe next year or maybe even 2 years because we weren't quite there yet. Our online viewership at the time just didn't justify it. But when we went back to live services on May 24th, and I heard the replay of the broadcast when I got home, and I went, ooh, we got to fix that. And my audio engineer is great, but it just did not have that live feel to it. So I put a proposal together, and I found a console on eBay, oddly enough. Bought it from another church just out of North Carolina or someplace. They'd outgrown it. Worked perfectly with our Yamaha Dante environment, CL5 and a QL5 as a broadcast console. And I had 2 audio engineers who I had also had to move him in that broadcast position once we got, so we were just able to do it early. And it made such a huge difference. The last couple services we've done have been broadcast mixed strictly from that console. And the way I presented that to the finance team was, look, we still got 400 people connections. That's just connections. That's not viewers, really. Because you could probably add times 2 to that if you got more than 1 people watching.
Right?
Yeah, so I says, we've got to give people that live experience, a good quality experience at home. There's still people that aren't coming yet and probably won't for a while. So that's how I was able to convince them that this was the right move right now. And oddly enough, God has really blessed us with tithes and offerings. We haven't seen a huge dip in offerings, and we've got a fair amount in reserve. And thank the Lord, the building was paid off back in July of last year. So again, there's not that debt hanging over us. God just really, it's almost like, none of us seen this coming, but it's like He knew. You see it all come together. So
nothing will put a spotlight on a need when a computer fails during a live broadcast and your pastors, elders, all staff are at home watching. So, there's a bleed over a little bit between my department and the video department. So those are the super high dollar ticket equipment type things, and we partner really well. We rely heavily, of course, on them to be able to provide us with all the things, as you know, we're church on TV, right? And everybody's picking everything apart, from what people wear to how they have their hair or what hat they have on. So, I get to deal with a lot of that, but on the other end, making sure that we have all the things that is going to make it feel seamless for that person sitting on their couch having their coffee and their PJs. And we take great comfort in that. I have 20 years prior experience in the corporate world. I did not come from a ministry background. And I've been here at Hope for 6.5 years. And so I run my department very corporately, almost like an ad agency. And, lots of negotiation goes into that too. I have signed contracts for sponsorships and for advertising that those people rely on those dollars too. And so we have gone back to the drawing board a lot with our external vendors, just making sure that I know that when we get past this, they're going to be there to take care of us, but how can we look at it differently? Early in March, we didn't even know that this was coming, and then March 12th hit, and I had creative due for something that was going to hit the mail on March 31st. And I am, pumping the brakes and putting out all the calls to say, we've got to change our creative. You already have it. Stop the presses, literally. We've got to push, church online. And so, being able to be flexible, my entire department has had to be very flexible. For the most part, we're working 6 days, 7 days a week, to be able to make all of the things happen. And the sweat equity in that flexibility is absolutely worth shining a huge light on, because not only do our congregants maybe are starting to have a little bit of digital fatigue, we're having some major digital fatigue on our side as well.
Cool. I know we've got to wrap it up, and everybody's got to go. Just one inspiring word. Everybody doesn't have to say something, but if you could encourage a leader at a smaller church that's maybe budget small or the people are few, what could you encourage? What could you say to encourage another leader in ministry at another church, or even synagogue or temple? Because obviously this is Christian faith-based, but we have a lot of other faith-based organizations that follow Inspire Media. So
I would say social. That's the most important thing these days. You just have to get on there and develop relationships, because that's not something you really have to budget for. We've discovered that kind of organic content has been something that we've had to really, and it seems strange to push for organic content, but when you're talking about adding volunteers and finding people that can kind of give you that content that you're craving, and that's just something that they're going to do anyway. It was obviously something they did when we had events in person, but now that we're at home, it's what are you doing during the day? How are you reading your Bible? How are you doing your devotional? Just trying to interact. So we've tried to get some more personal interactions with people, and I think that I would encourage people to really delve into that, because that's something that doesn't really cost money. You can get one of the college interns to help with it too. And I've been thankful that I've got a couple of people that I've gotten to build on that with. But
I would agree. I think that using what you have, this exercise has stretched our worship team, and about halfway through, the light bulb came on, and we did, at-home worship nights, and publicizing those on social. It is not, those are super budget friendly, because they don't cost anything except a little bit of creativity, some planning, and then the execution of it. And they have been so fruitful for us, in engaging, particularly when people were shut down, and they were, after dinner, they were looking for things to engage with other than the TV and the news, and the sorrow and heartbreak that we're faced when we turn those elements on. So we just really using what you have and, just polishing it up a bit in a different way.
Anybody else inspiring somebody?
I was just going to say, I just think for big or small, just trying to stay faithful to sharing the word and keeping that relationship with people. I know our youth ministry, they had all these plans for the summer, but all that got canceled, camps, travel, all that got canceled, but they decided they wanted to do the game shows, Family Feud and Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? And at first I was like, what do you, but we end up, in the midst of services and things like that, we end up doing those things, and those, the comments on the thing where my whole family's watching, my whole, my extended family's watching, those type of things. So I've just seen, those youth remained, and we're trying to remain faithful during this time. And I've seen with so many of our church and so many other churches that God has shown his favor on the church during this time. And so we're still reaching people, and we thought we couldn't, but we still are. So I would just say remain faithful during this time.
And I would definitely say that if you're looking at this in any way but a possibility in a way that you can make things better, you're looking at it the wrong way, because I've grown closer to God. I know people in my ministry have grown closer to God. There is no reason why this is not an opportunity to get better, get rid of the unnecessary. COVID has laid out the playing field where there's unnecessary things that are gone. The Band-Aids are ripped off. Do we need this? Do we not need this? What's important? Bringing balance to your ministry where, when times are great and tithing's it's all good, man, you're going one way. When something like COVID hits, it makes you rethink everything. So this is a time of opportunity, and you shouldn't look at it any other way but that.
Well, none of this is not a surprise to God. He knew exactly what was going to happen here. He allowed it to happen. And I think to some extent, what he tried to teach me through this is that, we just kind of need to sit back and, evaluate how we do stuff, but even just sort of, media ministry is just, we're blowing and going 90 to nothing all the time. And, it's a lot of hours, not a lot of pay, not even a lot of appreciation sometimes. Although I will say, I get a lot more people saying, "Hey, man, the stream looked good this week," or "We're so glad the media team's doing this," and I brought my family in. I mean, I call it the Dean team. I got myself, my son, my daughter, my wife. They're all running cameras and graphics, and a couple other people. I got a 15-year-old running our jib. He's fabulous, but we'll get through this. It does look a little different. But we will get through this, and I think we'll come out on top. I think we're all discovering new ways to reach people, and again, it's not always just in the building.
Yeah, I think one last thing I'll say is through this pandemic, it's almost like a spotlight was shown on an idol of significance for me, and I think the Lord really used it to show me that comparison is killer. If I'm watching everyone else's live streams and trying to compare my craft to theirs, that's not what the Lord's called me to do, right? He's called me to walk with people and to be present with people, and he's already put me in a position to do my craft. And I always want to get better at my craft, but the pandemic has really kind of heaped the load on so that I'm not even reaching my own expectations with my craft. And so what's this all for? I think the Lord's really shown me that my significance doesn't come through video and media, but it comes through just being his son and being faithful.